Welcome to CAF Warbird Tube. On this episode, number 258, Carl Kjarsgaard is back from the Bomber Command Museum of Canada in Netton, Alberta. And Carl, he is widely respected for his research, not only into the Halifax that we're going to talk about tonight, but also into the history of the Bomber Command, and also for helping preserve the stories, aircraft, and artifacts connected to the men who served during World War II. And we'll talk about that in depth tonight, including the 40th anniversary of the museum, which just happened this past weekend. The RAF Bomber Command and the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan. It's home to a number of airplanes, 15 in fact, in the museum, including the Halifax that we're going to talk about tonight. It's a restoration project that has been ongoing for a number of years. We talked to Carl about 18 months ago about where the project was, and we'll get an update tonight. But before we get that update, if you have any questions as we're talking tonight, please just type those in the chat box. We'd love to have you as part of the conversation. That's the fun of Warbird Tube. So if you've got a question, put that in the chat box, and we'll put Carl on the spot and see if we can get an answer for you. All right. So Carl, welcome back to the program, and good to see you once again, my friend.
Good. Well, thanks, Steve. I appreciate the invite, and thank you guys for keeping this history of aviation and the warbirds going. Yeah. And we're doing up here in Canada, we're running parallel to you guys and saving our aircraft and remembering our veterans.
Absolutely. And one of the things that it kind of ties our CAF group and the United States and the Bomber Command Museum is something that I know is very, very close to you, you're very passionate about, and that's the Royal Canadian Air Force and the Americans who came to Canada before the U.S. officially joined World War II and served. Many of them also were lost in action with that. But that's part of what the Bomber Command does, not only remembering the Canadian veterans, but also those Americans who crossed the border to the north and joined the effort before Pearl Harbor.
Sure. And so this is slide number 2. Is that correct, Steve?
Yes.
And
yes.
Okay. I wanted that up front here on your program because I know we're reaching all of the USA and and Canada and the UK. And what I wanted to do was these 8,864 Americans that joined the Royal Canadian Air Force, this has nothing to do with the Eagle squadrons. Right. There's 250 Americans in the Eagle squadrons. So why can't the 8,864 Americans in the Royal Canadian Air Force get any credit? And look closely, folks. Look at that map. In every state is the number of Americans killed in action in the Royal Canadian Air Force. And remember, Steve, the ratio is 10 to 1. You know, like for every 10 Americans that joined the Royal Canadian Air Force, one of them was killed in action. So if you had, a certain state like Wisconsin, you look at that's 12, isn't it? 12, 12. Killed in action. That means 120 lads from Wisconsin came up before Pearl Harbor and joined the Royal Canadian Air Force. And so it's huge. And the Canadians don't know too much about it. The Americans don't know too much about it. And that's why we want to spotlight this, is because our museum has such a great archive that we were able to say, look at that. There's all these American guys. So we're one of the only museums in Canada promoting these, the contribution of the 8,800 American lads.
Yes, absolutely. And that's it's something we've spotlighted on all of the times that you've been on the show. And it really is, it's a story that's there, but it's just not received the publicity it should. And
sure.
It really,
and we'll talk about one of the very special RCAF Americans a little bit later in the show. I'll spotlight him, but let's obviously, if Americans want to say, oh, this is a Canadian airplane and it's a British airplane and it has nothing to do with America, there it is, folks. 8,800 Americans.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about Carl himself and give folks a little background on you and your very wide and varied career with
Yes,
airplanes.
well, I started out in flying college. I did 2 years, came out with all my ratings and horseshoes up the nose. I got a job in 1972 as a co-pilot on Twin Otter on floats between Vancouver and Victoria, harbor to harbor. So that's where I got my start. And then that's almost the end, Steve. There I am in my 767 coming across the Atlantic. And that's right near the end of my career. So 39 years commercial flying. And all I can say is I'm proud. No one ever got hurt on any of the flights that I was on, but I sure scared a few.
What was it like flying the Twin Otter from harbor to harbor? That looks like it would be, on the one hand, very the scenery's got to be great, but at the same time, it's got to be a little scary going point to point like that.
Well, you start out at the harbor and
Yep.
you make sure you don't hit any boats. And then over in Victoria, that harbor was so enclosed, you had to be right on the money. And then you know that those PT6s, they have reverse props. So as soon as you touch down, you pull reverse. And sometimes we came close to the docks, but we did okay. And that was a real experience for me, flying Twin Otters on floats. It's a beautiful bush plane. And I did 2 years of bush flying with Twin Otters.
Wow. You've been all over, haven't you?
Well, sort of, but I only got kicked out of a few places, okay?
There you go. So, how did you start with the restoration of the Halifax and trying to find parts and pieces?
Well, okay, got to back up a little. When I was getting all my ratings,
Yep.
the World War II guys, British and Canadian that flew in World War II, they were my senior instructors, and they would fascinate me with their stories as I was an 18-year-old starting out. And I just researched and went further and further. Then I found out that we saved lots of Lancasters, but 70% of all combat done by Canadians and Americans with Canadians, 70% of all that was on the Halifax bomber. And one of the greatest adventures I ever had was in 1995. We went to a lake in Norway. We found a Halifax in 700 feet of water, and we lifted it up with robotic subs. And I wanted to bring a Halifax back to Canada for all those Halifax bomber crews in Canada who had to put up with the malarkey about the Lancaster was the only airplane we ever used in World War II. So there's the photo of the happy day of bringing it up on the beach. And then 10 years fast forward, and there is the beautiful Halifax from the lake restored. And I took pride in giving back to these Halifax boys their beloved airplane. And now they didn't have to listen to the people say, oh, you must have been on Lancasters. And okay, so there's a parallel, Steve. There's a parallel between, okay, the B-17 gets all the glory. The B-24 Liberator that they made more of takes a second seat to the B-17s. Battle of Britain, Hawker Hurricane takes a second seat to the Spitfire, but it's actually the Spitfires were in majority. Sorry, I meant Hurricanes were in majority.
Yeah.
And in Canada, the Halifax is 70% of all of our combat. Only 20% of Canada's, I didn't say British.
Right.
I said Canadian combat is 20% is Lancaster. So it's over 3-to-1 ratio.
Yeah. So with that thought in mind, why did you have to go overseas to find a Halifax to bring up? Or there just weren't any in Canada at all?
No. And here's the problem is the Canadians used them in England when their squadrons were there. And when the war was won in Europe, the Canadians came home with their Lancasters and they left behind their Halifaxes with 70 or 80 bombing missions on each Halifax. And the Brits cut them all up for pots and pans.
Sure.
So, and there I am, a young man getting into aviation, and I say, I got to see a Halifax. Where is a Halifax? And there was only one partial Halifax in England, but there was 0 in Canada. So unfortunately, I got a bee in my bonnet. And I said, I'm going to go find a Halifax for our Canadian lads.
Yeah. And interesting, you bring up a point that the Brits, cut up the airplanes for pots and pans. And something that's kind of lost in, at least on the American side, I'm only talking for what I know from this side, is that we here in America, after the war was over, things in America, the economy was booming, everything was going very well, but in England it was not. And there was almost a 10-year period where the hardships that the English had during the war continued. So the fact that they didn't think twice with cutting up these airplanes, because they needed raw materials, because their economy was just totally in shambles. And it's one of the things that I found, and I guess I'm on a soapbox here, but in doing these programs, is that we in America have a tendency to look at World War II through an American lens and forget some of the other contributions, most of the other contributions of all the other allies, including Canada, United Kingdom, Australia, all these other countries all played a part in this. And so one of the things that I hope to do with this program is to spotlight some of the other countries that were very, very important in winning the war, including Canada and including the Halifax, which has kind of been a little bit forgotten. Especially, like you said, the Lancaster takes the spotlight. So,
well,
all right, off the soapbox now.
Yes, okay, but that soapbox, you're leading me. I'm a reactor. You're leading me into something. So the Americans, 8th Air Force, all that good aircraft during the daytime, the Americans did the daytime bombing. And when the Americans were finished, the Brits and the Canadians and the Australians would go out at night in their Halifaxes and Lancasters and teach Adolf Hitler a lesson. And so day and night we kept going. Now, I'll just throw this in. Okay, D-Day, and the armies are successful onto the beaches. Okay, so you need to put that in context. For 40 days before the army hit the beach, Bomber Command blasted the hell out of the supply lines, the depots, and the bridges of Normandy. And then for 30 days after they got a foothold on the Normandy beaches, Bomber Command bombed the hell out of all of the supply lines trying to push the Allied armies back into the sea. Yeah. So you're taking that risk. D-Day could have failed if Bomber Command hadn't done what they did before D-Day and after D-Day. So anyways, sorry, am I spitting a little bit? Okay. No,
we're good.
Wanted to add that. So
yeah, absolutely.
So that's what I wanted to say is it's important. So now this is what I want to tell you is all the bomber groups that flew at night, the RAF groups, there's 200 or 300 bombers in each one of these groups. The Canadians were flying mainly Halifaxes. See that? Over 3 to 1.
Yeah.
If the Halifax is such a bad bomber compared to the Lancaster, how does the Halifax end up number 1 with the lowest loss rate of the entire war when they're going to exactly the same targets and exactly the same distance in exactly the same weather, and number 1 group in all of RAF Bomber Command is the Royal Canadian Air Force with their Halifaxes. So it's another statistic that says, hey, these guys are no slouch.
Yeah.
So that is something that I wanted to point out is Halifaxes were a good airplane.
Yeah.
Here's what Halifax people do. They give Lancaster credit for being the best bomb hauler and all of that good stuff. But I can't emphasize it enough. The Halifax with those big radial engines, the Bristol Hercules monsters, they were a great performer.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just the name of the engine alone. It's just
that's right.
Evokes strength.
So we did that first Halifax. Yeah. Then we found another Halifax in a swamp in Belgium, and we dug down 20 feet to get the Halifax out of the mud. But we didn't do it for the airplane. We did it for the families of the 3 missing airmen that were still inside. And we found all 3 guys, and we gave their bodies back to their families, no longer missing in it, MIA. And that was very rewarding and very powerful, is to give that back. Then the third recovery is I'm in Malta, and you know how big the air battles were in Malta.
Yeah.
I'm in Malta on a vacation, just yucking it up. And the guy said, well, Carl, I heard you're looking for another Halifax to do. He says, oh, there's one down in a scrapyard down the street, and it was actually 2 airframes. You got to understand, the Hastings transport, 4-engine transport after the war, they used a Halifax wing to make the transport. So if you found a wing and all the other pieces of the airframe, you could start a Halifax. So here I am buying everything for $1 a pound in Malta. And then we deassembled everything, put it in container, brought it back to Canada. And lo and behold, remember the Belgian recovery? Scott Knox became an aircraft engineer after the Belgium recovery. And he said, Carl, I'd like to rebuild your Halifax for you. So that's me on top of the wreckage out of the scrapyard. Then down below is Scott's first work on the main spar, a 30-foot main spar for a Halifax. And there's Scott on the left and Harry on the right. And they're putting the ribs onto the main spar. But that's 5-6 years ago. So we're going gangbusters, and now we have a brand new rebuild shop. So we can go to there it is.
Gorgeous.
Okay. Arnprior Airport is just west of Ottawa, the nation's capital in Canada. And we have Hangar 42, which is 60 foot by 40 foot. And we're doing all the center section. And you see she's all bolted together. And you see on the back of those ribs, you see how the flaps tuck up and in. And then, okay, go to the lower right. There's the first flaps being built. And another recovery we did was from the Baltic Sea in Sweden. We found a Halifax in 40 feet of water. And part of the gems that we got out of this aircraft in Sweden was the flaps. So the flaps became the nucleus for building brand new flaps. So if you want, you see there, folks, it says Facebook page by that name. So it's called Rebuild Shop. Go to Facebook and look for Rebuild Shop, and you can see all that we're doing for the Halifax rebuild.
Now, with the flaps, were those fabric covered then, or was it metal covered?
Well, the leading edge of the flaps was metal covered, but as you get back to the trailing edge of the flaps, it was fabric. And so Scott's going gangbusters there with his team, and they're doing a great job. And I usually go there about every 2 months. Okay, so we've got the airframe, the bones being rebuilt in Ontario, and out at my museum, Bomber Command Museum, we're doing the engines the propellers, and the turrets. So it's kind of like shadow factories, you know?
Yeah.
And then we're bringing everything together at Bomber Command Museum out west near Calgary, Alberta.
John Elliott is one of our viewers tonight, and he's asking for your opinion on what are the best and maybe not the best things that you feel about the Halifax. As you're thinking about the airplane.
We've already said that the Lancaster was the best bomb hauler. It could carry a little more load than the Halifax. But what you want to do if you're in a firefight at night in a bomber, you want to be in a Halifax, because Handley Page put the emergency exits for getting out of the bomber in a hurry beside each man's workstation. So step 1, 2, gone.
Yep.
Now, the emergency exits on the Lancaster were placed maybe in not so convenient locations. I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm saying the Halifax you had a 25% better chance of getting out of a Halifax than you did out of a Lanc. And I can prove that. I got the RCAF statistics. And also, Scott Knox his dad flew Lancasters. He's looked at Lancasters, and he's also he's doing the airframe. He's doing the airframe. And he says the Halifax is just a touch more robust in the airframe and in the assembly. So, yes, you can be, which would you rather fly into combat? A regular airframe or a brick outhouse? You know what I'm saying? Is
yes.
You and the Halifax boys swear by their 4-engined heavy that starts with an H. So yeah, to answer his question, Halifax was tougher, and it was easier to get out of in a hurry.
Yeah. This is quite a rig you've got here with the engine on the trailer.
Yes, we had one of our local trailer experts said, we will build you an engine run trailer so you can test all your Bristol Hercules engines that you're going to be running. And so we've got that all plumbed. That's number 2 engine. And so number 1 engine in the far right photo with me touching both engines, the one on the trailer, that's number 1 engine. The one I'm touching on the other side is number 2 engine, and those two are running good, and we put them into hibernation. And number 3 engine, furthest away from me on the very far right, that is the one that we've just done. And we're going to show you a video of running number 3 engine for the first time in 50 years. And here's what I know, Steve, is if you do the first engine and you pull your hair out, but you get it right, then the second engine is a little easier. Even I know that. And the third engine, we got it right, but we hadn't run it. It hadn't run in 50 years. And so this is a Bristol Hercules engine for a Halifax. We're going to show you a video here, folks. And it is a really good start. Yeah, I just saw that. Okay, master's on. Throttle. Throttle's good at 22. Boost pump pressure's on. My fuel valve is open. Clear prop. Folks, you don't know this. That engine's been sleeping for 50 years, and you've already seen what it's done. So we get an A for preparation, and considering 50 years has passed, we got ourselves an engine, and there was 110 PSI on the oil pressure. So we're golden, and now we got to just fine tune her and get her to wake up fully. We're not going to feed her coffee, but we will get her to wake up. I give it a B+. We got a leak there. Yeah. It's a blue fitting there. Okay, and your valve's off up there, Hugh? Yep. Right. We know we're generating good engine fuel pressure on both pumps. On both pumps.
Where is that gauge now?
The mixture control. Yeah. Right there. Okay, I've got two fuel pressures, 30 PSI, okay? Negative. No leaks. It's good. It's good. Clear, prop.
I like that. And were you winners? Have any metal in the oil?
Negatron, and we have 3 filters on that engine. We have the fine filter and the coarse filter, and then we put a hydraulic canister filter on the oil return line to make sure that we keep everything clean. And so those are the first 3 engines, and then the RAF Museum gave us another Bristol engine, and I guess the Americans would call it a QEC. It's a quick engine change. It's firewall forward. And they gave us this Bristol Hercules, and it's just like the other 3 engines. It's a Hercules 216, which is a very close to a wartime engine. So there's number 4, folks. And I described this as Carl praying to a false god. Hercules, almighty Hercules. But you know what, Steve? I didn't realize it. They did not inhibit that engine. So it sat for 50 years. And okay. Did you know that England is not desert climate?
Right.
And so when we opened it up and we're well into deassembling it, every single cylinder, sleeve, and piston was fused with rust. So we're having to replace most of the cylinders, all of the sleeves, and there you can see the sleeve on the right, and that came out of that engine. And it took us 2.5 months to get all 14 cylinders off the engine.
So are any of those parts salvageable for the engine?
Yes, and we do have lots of extra brand new 0 time parts.
Okay.
But okay, I'll make an appeal right now. We need Bristol Hercules sleeves, sleeve valves. We need them desperately. We've only got 5 new ones, and I'm looking all around the world for runnable sleeves, not sleeves like that little son of a biscuit eater over there. So, but we're good at doing these engines, but you got to have new parts if you want to run it.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at in the spring of 2026.
Yeah. Now this is a pretty fascinating picture, because this is something that I've not seen before, and I would think some of our viewers have not seen before either. There's a lot of gear work that is in that engine.
That's right. So you can see on the left, we took the reduction gear case off the front of the engine.
Yep.
And then you see back there at the back, you see the cover is still on it. Then we took the cover off, and underneath are all the gears that drive the cams, that drive the sleeves, that the pistons go up and down inside the sleeve. The sleeve is the burning chamber, not the outer cylinder. But all the cams that drive the 14 sleeves, those are the gearing on a Bristol Hercules engine. And like Steve, I think I mentioned that to you earlier. I put that photo on Facebook, and over a 48-hour period, 20,000 people looked at it and said, oh my God. And so now Roy Fedden is the inventor of this aviation sleeve valve engine for Bristol. And I know where he's from, Mars. Okay. Roy Fedden is from Mars, because they did all this without computers and just slide rules. And it's a beautiful engine, and you think it's complicated, but you see every gear there? It's got a mark on it. And when you line up all the marks, there's 117 marks, okay? But when you line them all up with number 1 cylinder at top dead center, all the marks line up. But that's for me to figure out, and for you guys to say, ooh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So that's the Bristol Hercules, the hidden talent inside, and powerful engine, 1,650 horsepower.
Amazing.
And, let's go on to, what does Carl have collecting to keep this going? And I found 12 brand new Halifax propeller blades in crates in England, and I had to trade them Harvard stuff. That's T6 for all you guys down south there, and some Merlin parts and some other parts. And they gave me 12 brand new blades for a Halifax, and they're scarce as hen's teeth, because the engine on a Halifax turns opposite to a Lancaster. And okay, I'll tell you the secret. You know, the Halifax propellers, they have a hub on them, just like Hamilton Standard. De Havilland of England copied the 33 E60 propeller hub, and they put Halifax blades on the 33 E60 Hamilton Standard prop, and that's where the hub came from. So does Carl have to order rare British parts from England? No, I go to my guys in the States that have Hamilton Standard parts. But you have to know the different part number. There's a British number and a Hamilton Standard. And there's one of the first Halifaxes assembled, and we had to get it out of the way because we got more stuff to rebuild. But we're hanging that up on the beam until we're ready for hanging it on the engines.
Yeah. When do you think you'll actually be putting the engines on the airframe?
Oh, it's going to be probably 5, 7, 8 years.
Okay.
But here's the thing. Here's the blessing in this is when, okay, you've heard that phrase, if they build it, they will come, right? Okay. So as you're fixing your Lancaster or you're building up a Halifax, people are fascinated and they come to see the rebuild. And that's when we tell them, did you know 10,800 Canadians and Americans were killed in action flying in Bomber Command? And most of them were flying the Halifax. And I forgot to underline this. The majority of those 851 Americans killed in bomber combat in the Canadian Air Force, the majority were flying the Halifax.
Yeah.
So that's your fifth heavy bomber of the Americans is right on the end. You got to have a Halifax because you got the other 4 heavies. So am I selling a good product here, Steve?
I think so. Yeah.
It's just I want people to not say, well, that doesn't that's not connected to us.
Right. Yeah.
And let's go on to the next slide. Okay, these are the other goodies that I found ricocheting around England. And what I do is, wait a minute, you got to back up. The common denominator is beer. And when I find guys that are warbird lovers in England, like Andy Ward and Patrick Smart and Andrew Panton, when I find these guys that are really passionate, I try to get a rapport with them. And then all of us can go hunting for everything we need in England. And it's been very productive. There's 2 outer wing panels that fit a Halifax. And Scott has those now at our rebuild shop. Then on the upper right, that's the storage of the outer wing panels till we need them later. And that's a 25-foot wing with a 4-foot wingtip added on. So now the bottom one left is, I found this tail turret for a Halifax in a guy's backyard west of London, England. And he said to me, and I think I've told you this story, but you're going to get it. I'm old enough, I can tell stories twice, okay? Is what happened was, the guy that owned it, he says, you're going to have to go talk to Maisie, my daughter. She grew up with this turret, and this is her rocket. She called it her rocket. And if you can't convince Maisie to sell it to you for the Halifax project, you don't get it. So, man, I had to dig deep, eh? I had to get my violin out. I had to, and I'm talking to Maisie. And finally she said, yes, okay, you can have it. So that's, the turrets are being rebuilt at the Bomber Command Museum. And Scott is doing the airframe in Ontario at this time. And that's the mid-upper turret, lower right.
Yeah. How many volunteers do you have working on this project?
Well, I would say we've got 8 or 10 guys on the airframe rebuild in Ontario, near the city of Ottawa. And we've got tons of guys working at the museum in just south of Calgary, Alberta. That's our headquarters. So I would say we've got 8 or 10 guys in the museum in Alberta. So we've got enough guys. We're trying to find people all the time, and we're looking for parts all the time. So folks, if you get a contact for me and you think you know where there's something, especially Bristol Hercules sleeves, you gotta call me, okay? But that's the priority right now, is we're out of sleeves.
Yeah.
Now, okay, so there are 60 Americans who fell through the cracks of history.
Right.
They're not in the Canadian memorials, and they're hardly spoken about in the American memorials. And you see the guy with the flat hat on right there? That's Max Dowden of Santa Cruz, California. And he was trained by the Royal Canadian Air Force, became a pilot of Halifaxes and Lancasters. And then when the United States Army Air Force, they said, well, wait a minute, there's 8,800 Americans in the Royal Canadian Air Force. We need all these guys back. They appealed to all these 8,800 guys, come on back to the 8th Air Force. And so Max was with his squadron, his crew there, and he said, I'm going to go join the United States Army Air Force. So he went down to join, and they gave him a uniform and an American ID. And then they said, are you finished your combat tour yet? And Max said, no, I'm partway through. And they said, well, go back and finish your tour with your bomber crew. And when you finish, come and see us and we'll assign you. And there's 60 Americans that joined the United States Army Air Force, were in a Canadian combat squadron, and they got killed. They got the chop before they got finished their tour. So Max Dowden is one of 60 men that we discovered, Americans in the RCAF, 8th Air Force. They're hardly mentioned anywhere in America or in Canada. So Max is one of those 60, and I wanted to show you that. And they're standing in front of an airplane, a heavy bomber. Steve, you can, bless you, you can get this answer. I know you can. It's a bomber that starts with an H.
It might be a Halifax.
Okay, good man. Okay,
but I want to bring this back, is that these were Americans who joined the Royal Canadian Air Force before the United States was in the war. They were offered an opportunity to come back to the U.S., to the 8th Air Force. They said yes, but then the 8th Air Force said, but you're still not done with, if you're not done with what your commitment to the RCAF, go back and do that. And in the interim between, they're sort of in limbo. They're not really Royal Canadian Air Force. They're not really U.S. Army Air Corps at the time, whatever. They're sort of in limbo. And as you said, there's 60 of these veterans who are just sort of lost in limbo. And I'm so glad that Bomber Command Museum of Canada has researched this and brought these stories back, because it's so important.
We spent 10 or 15 years gathering everything on all these squadrons. And if we hadn't had that huge archive to work from, then as we narrowed down and we got the majority of them, we said, okay, we've got all these guys on our memorial wall. And then all of a sudden, guys like Max Dowden, wait a minute, he's not in the Canadian memorials, and he's not really in the American memorials, because he didn't fly American combat yet.
Right.
And so it really has been a blessing to be able to zero in on these guys. So now Max Dowden and those other 59 guys are on our memorial wall, a national memorial wall. There's 449 Americans, young lads, on our Bomber Command Memorial Wall. The majority of those 851 killed in action, they're on our wall. The other guys would be in fighters and maybe in training accidents, but we've got 449 guys. So there is this common bond, man, that we can't turn away from it.
That's good. And we've got another video that I want to share, and this is from your 40th year anniversary.
We celebration. And you know what? Okay, Steve, I'm going to complain here. People go to Instagram and they've got attention span of about 15 or 20 seconds. Yeah. And on Facebook, you might stretch it out for us old folks on Facebook. But this is about a 4-minute video of highlights of this is Bomber Command Museum of Canada.
well worth the trip, I would say.
Yep.
How often do you run the engines on the airplanes?
Once a month in the
Okay.
summertime from May to September. And we pick a certain date and we have a certain event theme. And then we run all our aircraft. And the peak of the peak of that is focus on the Lancaster. And we run it right in front of the wall with the 10,800 names engraved on the wall. And I moved from Ottawa 2,000 miles west to be with these guys. They put that wall up in 2005. And I said, if this is the kind of guys that I think they are, I'm going to be there. And I moved to Nanton, Alberta to be with them. And it's just one of the smartest moves I ever made in my life. Now, there's the Lanc. There's a daytime shot of the memorial wall with the 10,800 names, including 449 American lads. And there's the nighttime shot. That wall is lit up 24/7. We never let the lights die on that. And when we run engines, we make noise, and that's our tribute. If we keep the engines alive, we keep their memory alive. And you see all the names that are on there? Okay, all the individual. We've got 30 pages on every man on that wall.
Yeah.
So we can really help families learn their combat heritage.
How long did it take to assemble this entire archive of information you have about not only the wall but also all the background information from the flyers?
Well, okay, so Carl is into collecting junk, you know what I mean, and turning it into treasure.
Yeah.
David Burrell is a great archivist, and he was wanting to gather everything he could so he would make our archive be top notch. And now British museums and all kinds of people are coming to us to get copies of our archives. But I would say at least 10 or 15 years of concerted effort.
Wow.
So
we've got one more video to share with folks, and set this one up for us.
Okay. And how's our time going, Steve? Are we okay?
We're good. We're good.
Okay. And will we have any kind of question period at the end?
Oh, yeah. Yep. We've got a couple of questions queued up here. I'm ready for you.
Okay. Very good. Very good. So this last video is just something that we put together. And what it is my chief engineer, Scott Knox. He's telling about his father flew in combat in World War II. He really wants to rebuild this Halifax as a tribute. And one of our videographers, Jim Blondeau, he's a professional musician. Have you ever heard of Gordon Lightfoot?
Yes.
Okay. Jim Blondeau is our Gordon Lightfoot on our team. He's that good. And he wrote a song called The Veterans of Time. So this is our tribute. This is our appeal. We got to keep going. We are a charity. There's all kinds of things you can do to help us. But this is our final video. This is our tribute. And let's just roll it and let the folks know.
Good example is material. So there's our operating expenses, day-to-day operating expenses, hydro, etc. And here's a good example. So these are aluminum rolls of T6 30 thou that we're going to be using to skin the trailing edge. Right here, this is $700 worth of material. Now, you know, I try to get the best deal I possibly can, but in the end, you can't get T6 aluminum for free. So we're appealing to everybody out there, please, in order to keep this going, and in order to keep our volunteers going, in order to grow, potentially grow and get other shops involved, we really need your support. And to those who have already supported us, thank you so much. Obviously, you can see that we're making good progress, and it's just so important that we don't forget those young men that fought and gave their lives, and we don't forget the Halifax, but most importantly, we don't forget those young men.
Take me from the farm, lead me to the runway. It won't do much harm anyway. I have seen the lights fading in the gunway. In a war we've learned to fight for a day, for a day. Sometimes so easy just to forget about the men and the women of time. While the world rolls around you, it's hard to think back to the brink of the end of mankind. Of freedom and justice, of everything learned, don't leave those memories behind. 'Cause I'm proud of those people and I'm proud of this land, and thank God for the veterans of time. Sometimes so easy just to forget about the men and the women of time. While the world rolls around you, it's hard to think back to the brink of the end of mankind. Of freedom and justice, of everything learned, don't leave those memories behind. 'Cause I'm proud of those people and I'm proud of this land, and thank God for the veterans of time. 'Cause I'm proud of those people and I'm proud of this land, and thank God for the veterans of time. Of time.
It's quite a tribute.
Yeah, well, we wanted to tune you into our frequency. We want to pay our respects.
Yeah.
Out of 100 bomber crews at night that started out to do 30 combat missions, they don't call them missions in Canada, they call them operations. Out of 100 bomber crews, only 25 out of the 100 finished 30 combat trips.
Yeah.
It's a huge sacrifice. Same thing with the 8th Air Force. There's this common bond. And so a shared sacrifice is a bond forever.
Certainly is. And we've got some questions from some of our audience members. John is wondering, did any of the engines come out of Alaska that you had, or did you have for the airplane?
No, they didn't.
No?
But we got 4 engines from an airline that had Hercules engines, and they used to fly to Alaska with their Hercules engines. There was a cargo transport called a Bristol freighter, and they used Hercules engines after the war. So we've got 12 Hercules engines now to make 4 runners. And if this number 4 engine doesn't kill me, we will run that next year.
Very good. Are there any, aside from the Halifax that you're rebuilding, are there any that are, there's none airworthy, and are there any others on display anywhere?
Yes, there's one at the RAF Museum in London, England. They pulled that out from underwater, but they decided it was a quaint idea. They decided not to restore it, so it's laying on its belly. And I'm not impressed with. They should have restored it, but that's just me flapping my lips. So and then at the Yorkshire Air Museum in the north of England, they have a Halifax there that they put together from pieces from all over the world. So we're doing the same thing as the Yorkshire Air Museum, but that's basically the only Halifaxes. So it's Halifax or bust, and here we go.
Yeah, well, very good. Here's a question from Mark. If the Halifax had more horsepower than Lancaster, how did the Lancaster have a bigger bomb load?
Well, okay, first off, the Lancaster had physically in the airframe a bigger bomb bay.
Ah.
Now, another thing, you needed the extra horsepower. Each Hercules puts out 200 more horsepower than a Merlin. Okay, so times 4. So a Halifax with Hercules engines has 800 more horsepower than a Lancaster airframe. But the Lancaster airframe, they put the Merlins lower on the wing. So the induced drag from the Merlin is than the induced drag from a big round Hercules on the wing.
Okay.
So you needed more horsepower. And if I had to pick a Chevrolet with a 350 or a Chevrolet with a 454, you know which one I'm going to pick. So the Halifax with the big engines was a great performer.
Yeah.
And, but they're all Bomber Command, all those young lads.
Yeah. We've heard Merlin engines, obviously on Mustang, Mosquitoes, that sort of thing. But when was the last time, and I'm really reaching on this one, when was the last time you had 4 of the Hercules engines running on an aircraft? That must be a very unique sound.
It would be like 1947 would be the last time that Halifaxes were declared surplus. They didn't keep them much beyond 1947, but the Hercules engine was so powerful and so reliable. It's a 1,500-hour major. So you can get 1,500 hours out of it before you have to rebuild it. A Merlin is usually less than 1,000 hours per engine. And so it was so powerful, they were able to get, finally, by the end of the life of the Hercules, 2,000 horsepower out of that engine.
Wow. Philip has a good question here. As a U.S. citizen, what's the best way of contributing to the Halifax restoration? He said a great deal of his time in the 80s and 90s was spent with Ian Thompson of Winnipeg, who was a Halifax pilot officer during World War II.
Oh, man. You knew Ian Thompson?
Yeah.
Ian Thompson, Distinguished Flying Cross, and he did a complete tour. He was a buddy of mine also. And wow. Ian told me one time, we don't have enough time to tell you a story, but Ian was flying over the target and an 88 millimeter took one of the cylinders off the Hercules, tore it clean off.
Yeah.
Now it's running on 13 cylinders with the connecting rod flopping out of the engine block. And he flew it all the way back to England with that engine running. You don't want to shut down if you don't have to.
No.
And the Hercules was so tough, it kept running all the way back to landing in England. But Ian Thompson, great guy. Sorry, I didn't answer the question. I heard Ian Thompson.
Yep, it's okay. But Philip was wondering how someone can support the Halifax restoration.
Oh, okay. Well, the Halifax 57 Rescue is a separate charity. Just go online, do a Google, and put in Halifax 57 Rescue. And all the avenues that you can support, you can do it. Also, Bomber Command Museum of Canada is official partners with the Halifax rebuild crew. So you could even donate to the museum, which has a website, but you have to say this goes to the Halifax project, and they funnel it to us. So appreciate you thinking of us.
Yes. So Halifax 57, just Google that and you'll find out everything you need. So Carl, thank you so much for coming back and joining us again. And I'm sure this won't be the last time we talk, because this is going to go on for another couple of years, putting this airplane back together. But it's a fascinating story of the airplane, fascinating story of the air crews, and the cooperation between Canada and the United States. And It's really, it's just, it has so many different tentacles to it. I just absolutely love this story.
Well, bless you guys for thinking of us, and we got to stick together. And doesn't matter, Canada's waiting for you boys down south, and so come and join us, and we'll convert gasoline to noise for you. So
Sounds
thanks,
good.
Steve.
Absolutely, Carl. Thank you again for being a part of our show tonight, and thank you for watching and for all of the questions that you brought in. We enjoy it when our audience jumps into the conversation as well. So go to the Bomber Command Museum website. You can see not only about the Halifax, the Lancaster, and they've got 15 other aircraft that are there at the museum. And if you're in the area, make sure you stop by and visit the museum. Now, we'd also ask that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, CAF Media TV. And if you do that, we appreciate it. Also, click that bell icon and you won't miss any of the upcoming episodes when they are posted on YouTube. And remember, Warbird Tube is made possible by the Commemorative Air Force. For more information on our aircraft, the tours, and even becoming a member, visit commemorativeairforce.org. Any thoughts on tonight's episode or something you'd like us to cover in the future? Just drop us a line, media@cafhq.org. And from all of us here at Warbird Tube, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.
CAF Warbird Tube is produced by the Commemorative Air Force and hosted by Steve Buss. The views and opinions expressed by our guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the Commemorative Air Force. To learn more about the CAF, explore upcoming episodes, or watch past shows, visit commemorativeairforce.org or warbirdtube.com. You can also watch our show on YouTube at CAF Media TV or listen wherever you get your podcasts by searching Warbird Tube. Thanks for tuning in, and let's keep them flying.